everybody, Alex Maxey here. Welcome back to another week's devlog. Hope you guys all had a great 4th of July weekend. This week, we're going to be diving into the third-person controller of the game, the part where you actually jump in and walk around as a hero and go fight off all the enemies that Emily showed off last week. I want to start off by showing you guys the heroes we've implemented so far, and then some other stuff I've been working on since you guys last saw me. So, hope you guys enjoy. Our first character is the fighter. Our idea with the fighter was that he should be straightforward and simple with his toolkit and towers. After all, in most common fantasy stereotypes, the fighter is a go-get-em type of hero who is all about getting right into the thick of the action. This simplicity of his kit will be a good launching point for new players and for tutorials, so players can get a sense of how the game works before diving into the full game proper. So, his abilities, which you saw in our first devlog, are a short-range sword strike, a shield bash with a little more reach that can stun, and then a damaging charge that carries you forward at a faster than normal pace. Our second high fantasy hero is the Wizard. The Wizard, you'll notice, has a mana bar in the bottom of the screen and an extra icon off to the left. The Wizard hero ties in directly with his towers, with them not fighting but instead boosting the power of the Wizard. The one we mainly care about here today is the Conduit, which boosts the power and mana costs of his powers. The Wizard's primary power is Magic Missile, which shoots a few projectiles forward. The more conduits you have, the more missiles you will shoot. The second power is a fantasy classic, a Fireball. This one explodes on impact, dealing more damage and affecting a bigger radius with more conduits. His last power is the Teleport rune. The first cast places a rune onto the ground, which sits there indefinitely. The second cast, if cast within range of the rune, teleports the player to the rune and consumes it. The range at which you would teleport to the rune increases with more conduits. This one will be extremely useful on levels with multiple enemy paths, so you can quickly bounce between them, or it can be useful to put closer to the time node in the level to try to catch any stragglers who manage to sneak by you. Moving on to the modern heroes, the General is an interesting one. Modern heroes are all about tactical positioning and being able to affect wide swaths of the map with single towers. The General works with commanding the troops, helping to deploy them across the map more reliably and to direct their actions. His first attack is a simple, but fast, shot from his gun. His second power fires a beam, affecting one target. This beam, while applied to the target, causes all deployed troops nearby to focus that target and deal additional damage to it. His last power calls down some troops to help him out. Normally, it takes the modern hero's command center a little bit of time to produce this many troops, so this sudden burst of minions in the area is quite useful. The second modern hero we have is the Ace. Building on the positioning aspect, the Ace has different types of aircraft towers that must be strategically placed to maximize their usefulness. Like the General, the Ace has a simple shot as his first power. His second power, again like the General, is a targeting beam. This one significantly increases the amount of damage the enemy takes from his aircraft towers. Finally, and this power is arguably my favorite I've created so far, the Ace can toss a flare, calling in an airstrike from afar. The first of our futuristic heroes is the Engineer. Futuristic towers use a resource called energy, building it up through generators, which increase their effectiveness in some way. The Engineer is all about using his energy to its fullest, which you'll see when Nick goes over the towers next week. In terms of his powers, the first one is a simple beam attack, which does a constant amount of damage. His second is a grenade, which he tosses forward, dealing damage and stunning enemies. Finally, he can emit a Power Nova, which turns him into a walking generator to boost his towers at a critical moment in the wave. The second future hero is the Robot. Like the Wizard, he has an energy bar as well. This is his scrap bar, which he spends to use his skills. His abilities are low cooldown and powerful, but he needs a lot of scrap if he wants to spam them out. Scrap can be generated through one of his towers. His first ability is a simple attack that shoots a few projectiles forward. The cooldown of this ability gets lower and lower every time you shoot, letting itself ramp up in effectiveness, but also in scrap cost. His second power drops down a stationary turret that fires at nearby enemies. This has a low cooldown, so it can be thrown out in a key moment, but that also means it can cost you a lot of scrap. His final ability is more of a toggle than an active ability. While active, the robot constantly drains scrap but gives himself a powerful movement boost, useful for getting from one lane to another or catching up with a runner who got through. So that's what all our current heroes do. We can't wait to get your feedback in the comments below. Now that we're all up to speed on what the heroes do, let's move on to what I've done the past few weeks. I started off by modeling and animating some units that get spawned through towers and whatnot. This included the footman that the fighter spawns from his barracks, the soldier for the modern heroes, the bot for the robot's bot factory, and the tank for the general. Using Unity's animation system, I can move individual pieces at different keyframes to make it move how I want. There's a delicate balance to be had of letting the tool make it move smoothly and making many minute changes over shorter time spans to give it the feel I want. Usually, I give a lot more individual frames to the heroes, as this is what the player will look at most, while I leave the units they spawn as much simpler animations so as not to visually distract the player from the game at hand. You'll also notice that since the first devlog, the UI looks a bit different, with symbols for different abilities, text for the energy bar, cooldown sliders, and the like. That was another big thing I did, creating the artwork and coding it all up to match with each hero. I was really excited to get started and improve the look of the game. So, after technical difficulties, it all went pretty smoothly from there. These past 2 weeks, I also began a high-level conceptual design for the levels you guys are going to see. Like Emily described last week, we've got a lot of different enemy groups to work with. Our idea is that the time lost will be prevalent throughout every section of the game. One of my goals then is looking to find unique and interesting ways to mix and match the enemies of the era with themselves, as well as the time lost to give a unique challenge to the player. And of course, a varying map geography will ensure that different enemy types pose different challenges. The other major thing I completed this week was adding a little extra punch to the third-person controller. In our first devlog, you notice everything was still when working with a fighter. Now, I've added a little bit of shaky cam when using the player's different attacks, giving a much more weighty feel to it. I'll likely add in some more things, like perhaps some blurred edges as the wizard casts a spell or something like that. But for now, I think this gives a good sense of weight and impact to the player's actions. There's been some other things I've worked on, but those are the most major steps I made since you guys last saw me. Moving forward to the next couple weeks here, I want to start bringing those levels I mentioned into the game so we can start to play test them. In addition, I want to keep tweaking and adjusting the powers of our heroes to make sure they look, feel, and play the way we want them to. I can't wait to hear your guys' feedback on them. It's going to be pivotal to making this game great. But that's all the time we have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Next week, Nick's going to be going over all the towers we made and some other stuff he's been working on. So be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to make sure you don't miss a beat. Like the video if you enjoyed it, comment down below, and thank you guys so much for watching. Game on.